Well, at 20 minutes to 5, we can now say the decision taken in 1975 by this country to join the common market has been reversed by this referendum to leave the EU. We are absolutely clear now that there is no way that the Remain side can win.
In the last few years, people who are communicators for progressive causes, like me, have been going through a bit of a crisis of confidence. After the bruisings we've taken, we fear that the right wing have the upper hand in communicating to the hopes and fears of the people we need to solve the current crises. But that's not just demoralising and defeatist, it's rubbish. One reason we should doubt this, it wasn't very long ago that everybody was saying the opposite, that progressives were just naturally better at communications. Barack Obama's historic presidential campaign was the peak example of progressive confidence. Confidence in general, and specifically in our communications prowess. Messaging that exuded hope over fear.
Because we have chosen hope over fear.
Fresh graphic design. Expert staff dedicated to digital. A data and analytics operation that was so optimized, it famously raised an extra $60 million by testing 11 different variations of a sign-up button. But it wasn't just in electoral politics that our tails were up. In many ways, the groundwork for a new progressive communications model had been laid from the millennium onwards by the activists and charities who grew million-strong supporter lists and launched slick, simple, and publicly popular campaigns that still make a lot of comms people wistful today. So from the 2000s to the early 2010s, it seemed like a variety of factors that were inherently more our bag, from the digital revolution, to demographic change, to decentralised organising, meant that progressives had an inbuilt communications edge. So what happened? Well, the answer you might already be thinking is, Brexit happened. Trump happened. Orban and Bolsonaro and Duterte happened, and all those other fragile, vain bullies who seem to win victory after brutal victory. More specifically to communications, that optimism of the noughties turned to paranoia, with some justification, that the digital revolution actually meant messiness, noise, and polarisation that suits the right wing more because they have more money and fewer inhibitions. That demographic change towards a more liberal and multiracial generation that we were banking on exposed our lack of audience insight. Conservatives took advantage, either by much hyped or slightly dodgy personality data, or just because they were playing an asymmetric game. Their comms didn't need to succeed, they just needed enough disruption for ours to fail to change the status quo. And we also blamed ourselves, that our messaging was too complicated and cold-blooded, that our communications infrastructure was too locked up in institutions with slow sign-off procedures and unhealthy funding incentives, ignoring the real battlefields of the gutted mainstream media and the parallel universes of social media bubbles. But let me tell you why I disagree with this pessimism. And let's cheer ourselves up at the same time with a little tour of conservative communications cock-ups. Russian president and self-styled Bond villain Vladimir Putin is infamous for the amount of manpower and money his cronies spend trying to provoke culture wars in other countries. But they're not always successful in their domestic efforts. The Federal News Agency is descended from the group that created a lot of that anti-Hillary Clinton content in the 2016 US election, which you might have heard described as a troll factory, although they do have 200 editorial staff and millions of regular views. This is an ad produced by that same Federal News Agency in support of a campaign to make the Russian constitution define marriage as between a man and a woman. And as you can see, it tries to appeal to homophobic queasiness about gay adoption. Wait for the hilarious punchline.
Так вот она, твоя новая мама.
However, reports from Russia say that this mocking tone against a fairly innocuous and actually quite loving and well-off gay couple, as depicted on screen, apparently went down quite badly with its audience. We tend to think of backlash as solely a conservative reaction to liberal progress, and that conservative shamelessness is an asymmetrical advantage. And that's true. But it also means that sometimes they go too far and create backlash against their shamelessness. And more long-term, they are gradually and inexorably associating their brand with being nasty and mean. America, of course, has historically been more of an exporter of right-wing nastiness. And for Europe and Africa, that has often come in the form of conservative operatives and cash. Ahead of the 2018 Irish referendum to repeal the constitutional ban on abortion, there was a familiar threat. The Brexit and Trump data people were being flown in, along with loads of evangelical dark dollars, to anonymously flood social media news feeds with unregulated propaganda for the no side. But rather than fixating on the unfairness and the enemy, Yes campaigners focused on disarming their weapons, with Facebook pressured to ban foreign advertising and Google pausing all ads. And the subsequent tantrum by the No campaign was seen as a mistake that revealed how reliant they were on outsiders and advertising in place of people power and a positive message. It's not just new media. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson made his name as a cynically provocative journalist, so you'd think he would have recognised the trap he was falling into when a campaign challenging toxic media practices pressured advertisers to withdraw from newspapers that published attacks on minorities. And he responded by penning a full opinion article, amplifying their point by fretting that it's deeply disturbing to learn that this campaign is beginning to have an effect. As the campaign's director said, part of our strategy from the start was to try and provoke an overreaction from the media, which we could then capitalise on, but it worked far better than we could ever dare to hope. From one perspective, this is a technical communications failure that we normally criticise ourselves for doing. But it's also part of a wider trend. We rightly worry about the right-wing slant to corporate-owned mainstream media. But that reliance and obedience to their corporate agenda setters can also be their vulnerability. My final reason not to believe the doom-mongering is more of a reminder to myself to check my own ego. As progressive comms people, we could all do with getting over ourselves. Communications is just one tool of the progressive movement, one force in the complex ecosystem of how change happens, alongside our cousins in the disciplines of mobilising, organising, litigation, policy and community services, to name just a few. Comms is just, almost by definition, the most visible, and so gets pointed to the most. Maybe we were not as smart as we thought we were at the beginning of the century. We were just riding the wave of what we can now see was a relatively favourable political climate, and being early adopters of the internet revolution. That also means that maybe we're not as dumb as we worry we are now. We've just suffered, like everyone else, from adjusting to the shock of the new world. Conservatives are not better at communications than progressives. If we can learn humility from our recent wake-up call and hang on to some confidence that the fake populists will eventually be exposed, then I think we're going to be okay. If you're interested in actually getting on with it and winning these arguments, I highly recommend supporting and learning from some of the campaigns I've mentioned in this video. Links to their sites and resources are below. If you're interested in watching more videos about activist communications, subscribe to my channel. There's a couple others already there, and I plan to do new ones every now and then. Thank you.